discussing an interview Sergey Levine gave recently. Here's the link is in the show notes. I think, as usual with Sergey, his insights are just really interesting and useful. He's one of those rare people who inspire whenever he talks, and it's really every other month or so he talks, and I don't know where where he gets all this inspiration from. I've never met him personally. I mean, I did meet him personally, but I never spoke to him personally. It was just a conference where we sort of chit-chatted in a group. But the point is, I think he's a good example of somebody that you wanna you wanna try to listen really carefully. I guess that's my point, and that's the purpose of this particular episode. I'm going to give a brief overview over why we actually care about somebody like Sergey Levin and what that actually means for us here at Orange Capital Partners, and then talk about the actual interview, which had some really nice tidbits. Now, first, let me start from, for new listeners, where Orange Capital Partners is, the purpose of Orange Capital Partners is we're a hedge fund. Our purpose is to generate wealth by investing in fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices. And we are particularly interested in real world AI. That's sort of where we live right now as investors. We're fully dedicated. Our portfolio is almost exclusively filled with companies that we believe will create a fully integrated supply chain from the silicon all the way to the application in real world AI, which means AI that understands physics, that understands space, that gets jobs done, whether it's cleaning a kitchen or welding something in space or fixing a pipeline or just or doing neurosurgery, so something like that. So as opposed to, let's say, something like a Grok or a ChatGPT today, which is it kind of lives in the digital world. So that's where we live as a hedge fund. That's our goal. And the way we pursue that, and for listeners that have been following us, I think that's not going to be news, but I'm still going to just give it to everybody else. We are really in the knowledge business and trying to understand the world from all different kinds of aspects. You know, we read books, we read novels, we go to conferences, we understand. We try to understand what's going on in science. We understand what's going on in technology. We try to understand what's going on in business and even in the humanities and philosophy. There is no area that is more or less suited to give us what we need, which is signal into how we can pursue our mission of generating wealth by investing in fundamental new concepts and engineering practices with large impact. So there's no particular, like, well, you have to study physics in order to, or you have to study engineering. There's no such thing. Now, there are things that are maybe more useful than others. In particular, I think it's useful to have a little bit of a strategy. You can't just go out there and randomly read. And so what we try to do is we try to put ourselves into the middle of the Venn diagram of technology, science, and business. So science is the general sort of field of trying new things, novelties. And Sergey actually mentions in the interview, some scientists are just interested in novelties. They don't care about applications. Novelty is a good thing in itself. Then we have technology, which is take the novelty and turn it into something that actually works, something that has real application, which is what a lot of labs are doing, whether it's in the universities or even in business. But the entrepreneur side of things, and that's actually a very important part of the Venn diagram, it's when you commercialize, and typically what that means is scale. And that's what it comes down to, at least in our universe. There could be areas, maybe, I don't know, if you sell fancy handbags, maybe scaling is not the most important thing. But even there, actually, you have to, have a global supply chain and artisans all over the world making these handbags. So, but anyway, the point here is we really talk about scale, and that's sort of where we live now. As investors, I think we're best positioned in trying to understand where those fields overlap, and typically you have a pretty good leg up to the market, because it's not we're smarter than the market. We would never say that after more than almost 30 years in the market, but what we have is a different focus. We have a different focus, right? the market's not focused on that. The market's focused on other things, and our focus is on that. And we believe that with that, we can generate wealth. It takes a little bit more time, it takes more patience, and our performance has been relatively pedestrian in the last couple of years because of that. But we believe in the long run, that's where the weight, the weighing machine of the market will prove us right. So let's talk about the interview now, because Sergey is one of those why are we talking about Sergey? Excuse me. Well, Sergey is one of those scientists that we believe has a lot of signal, and let's leave it at that. I think for this is not about him particularly. Maybe I should make a podcast or write a blog about him, but because I think he's an interesting personality, not just as a person, more as actually as a scientist, because he really embodies the kind of scientist that I think is really necessary. I also think, by the way, it would be amazing if his company, Physical Intelligence, would be bought by Tesla. And that's just a side note. I'm going to get to the conclusion why I think that's a good idea. Let's talk about the actual interview. So he said a few really interesting things. First and foremost, he said, let's say, that he always wanted to work on things where they get better while they're doing what they're doing. And I think that is a very nice way to explain what AI actually means in the context of a company. But I think the first real AI company was Google, because Google got better the more people searched on Google. Tesla is the first real world AI company. The more people drive the car, the better it gets, because it's built to learn from driving. How they did it, that's a different story. How Google did it, that's a different story. But the point is, you want to have this mindset as an entrepreneur, as an investor, as an employee. Actually, when I do things, I want to keep getting better while I'm doing this. Actually, this is just as a side note. Even your career should be like that, because you're just another form of intelligence. You're biological intelligence, but there's no difference between AI and you're like, you should have the same you should have the same aspirations. I want to get better while I'm doing things. So I thought that was very interesting. He spoke about the Moravec paradox, which is another huge insight. So easy things are hard and hard things are easy. That's the Moravec paradox. Well, it's not really what the Moravec paradox is. This is now the Sergey Levine solution of the Moravec paradox, which is things that are conducive to learning from data will eventually become easy. Things that aren't are hard. That's what it's really about. So certain things are harder to collect data and learn from data from, like, for example, brushing your teeth, or having a robot screw a screwdriver. It's not really even hard to get the data. Like, that's in principle not a hard task, because you could collect enough data to train the robot how to screw a screwdriver. What's hard, and this is another thing that he said, which I thought was very interesting, is the generality of a problem is such that it gets better while it's working and solving the solution, finding a solution to the problem while it's doing the thing. That's what generality really means. And this brings us to our previous episode about the competition between Tesla and Waymo. And we spoke about problems that Waymo has with scaling, because the tail end scales linearly with, human labor and explicit coding scales linearly, if not exponentially, with the tail end. And Tesla doesn't want to have that solution. Tesla wants to have a general solution, which means the car should start to learn on its own how to deal with the tail end. That's the ultimate goal, and that's part of the reason why Tesla is delaying unsupervised FSD. So we have to be patient, and I think it's a good example of for investors that are interested in being in this business. When we say we're patient, we're not just patient for the sake of being patient. We can also sell sometimes. But in this case, I think it's worth being patient, because Tesla really has a good reason to wait, and they're on the right path. And Musk has said many times, it's okay to fail, actually. It's almost paramount that they will fail every now and then. But what's important is to be on the right path and correct. And I think they are on the right path. Now, in principle, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to build a system that can get to many, many, nines behind the zero. I mean, kind of safety, all that sigma, whatever, for their FSD, as they have a system which gets better while it's learning. So I think that was really powerful, and let that sink in. I mean, this is definitely the bitter lesson applied to science, applied to research, applied to technology, and that's why we think actually, physical intelligence. It would be amazing if they merged with Tesla, because they're kind of like the deep mind for Tesla, or what deep mind is for Google. Physical intelligence could be for Tesla. So it'd be really amazing if they did. They have the same philosophy. Now, there's a couple of things where Sergey maybe differs from what Musk wants. For example, Sergey wants to build a system that people then can use and open source and tinker and experiment. But even that could be actually a goal that also Optimus has. Imagine Optimus with a physical intelligent backbone, AI backbone, and then the robot is given to the people, and then they can sort of experiment. And what's important is the robot will be relatively low cost. Another thing that Sergey is very obsessed about is that sensors, that robotics is not a sensor problem. Robotics is an AI problem. And actually, you can solve a lot of problems with very few sensors. For example, cameras can be used for haptics because you can see a deformation, and you can use AI to train a robot to understand touch just from vision. I know it sounds counterintuitive for humans, because we humans have haptics, and we might say, well, why don't we have haptics, so why shouldn't a robot have? Never forget another thing that Sergey said is that, look, we evolved. We had certain constraints in terms of we had to escape tigers. We have a lifespan of whatever, back in the day, 30, 40 years. Now it's longer. We have to mate. We have to hunt and food, and we have energy budgets. We lived in areas that gets cold and hot and all that. So there's a lot of constraints in humans, and that's why we evolved the way we evolved. And robots don't have a lot of those constraints. For example, just hypothetically, we could have a robot that can see, touch, and that could be good enough for many applications. Maybe not all of them. Maybe sex is one of them. I mean, we have the necessity to have sex with our counter gender to reproduce, and maybe a lot of this touch comes from there. Maybe that's why we have such a fine-grained touch, sensitive touch sense, and robots don't need that. So my point is, like the same way flight evolved very differently from biological flight. We have fighter jets and rockets. Birds can't do that. Birds can do other things really well that we can't do, but we don't have to necessarily anthropomorphize the robotics. In fact, we won't. That's almost sure. So I guess to summarize, I guess one more thing I want to say is the physiological manifestation of AI. Another thing Sergey said, which I thought was interesting. So neurons fire based on the tip of the tool, not the tip of the hand that holds the tool. In other words, that means that, again, this shows that it doesn't really matter what the tool is, as long as you understand the tip of the tool, and then you train the intelligence. I think this is very powerful. It shows how the bitter lesson works, even in let's say with animals like monkeys or humans. It the more general you are, and the more data you have, the faster you learn, and you don't need to understand how to hold a particular tool, or like all these intricacies and explicit details are irrelevant. What matters is that you're one with the tool, and then you execute. I mean, anybody who plays tennis can attest to that, or skis. Like, you become one with your tool, or a surfer. Certainly, you become one with the tool, and you can change the tool, and then you adjust your nervous system to that. But I think in general, that's a really powerful insight. So to summarize, Sergey Levine. Why is he such an interesting scientist to us? I think he has a creative aspect to his own, the way he works. And he probably is eating his own dog food. It looks like he is getting better while he's doing what he's doing, because he keeps getting better. He keeps inspiring us. Just listening to his interviews. And I don't even know how it is to work with the guy. Uh, but that's probably why he's so interesting, because he always comes up with new things, new ideas, new insights. I think this idea with the Moravec paradox being actually all about how conducive something is to to learning from data. That's the key. It's not about what's difficult. Neurosurgery sounds like a difficult task, but if it's conducive to learning from data, it's going to be solved with AI. There are problems, like for example, maybe coaching a football team might be relatively difficult because you don't have how do you train from data. So it might be something that it will take a long time, or an AI CEO and things like that, or maybe not, depending. Like the way one should look at the world going forward is really how conducive is this to learning from data? How can I find the right data, collect the data, janitorize the data in a way so the machine can learn from it? How can I learn at scale and then scale it up? Those are the questions. It doesn't matter what field, it doesn't matter, how difficult something seems for us humans, because it's irrelevant. Because we humans, we are limited by things that AI isn't. For example, AI can learn can learn at scale, particularly if we go to space and build space AI data centers, then we have enough compute and memory and energy to train a massive epoch, do a lot of training runs and learn at scale. And I think that's the bitter lesson at scale. And we believe that physical intelligence, in that sense, at least from a philosophical perspective, is very close to Tesla. So we suggest that Tesla buys physical intelligence. This would be an amazing transaction. I'm just saying this out loud as an investor for Tesla. I know maybe physical intelligence has different plans, and that's fine, but it would be great for us. I think it would be great for the world also, because Tesla could leverage physical intelligence at scale to the rest of the world. Thank you.